It's time to get started with our program night. So is Stuart with us tonight?
Yes, I am here.
Okay, Stuart, would you like to introduce our judges and either tell us something about them or have us have them do a little brief intro bio for themselves?
Sure, I wasn't prepared to do that. I don't have anything in front of me, but I do want to say a big thank you to Ralph Clevenger and Say Dempsey, and also, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting her name, our club judge.
Ellen Clark.
Ellen Clark.
Ellen Clark, of course, yes. So, you know, Ralph has been just a fantastic contributor to our club for years. And, you know, he's had great experience from Brooks Institute, so really a great judge. Say, I'm not sure if Say has judged for us before. Is that twice? Okay.
Yeah, it's been a few years though.
And Say, could you just tell us a little bit about your background?
Currently, I'm an instructor of photography at Santa Barbara City College. I've been teaching photography online and face-to-face since 2001. Yeah, so it's been a little while. And I recognize some faces in here. Some of you have been in my classes.
That's great. Yes, wonderful. Thank you. And Ellen, of course, our club judge, and we're so lucky to have her because she lives in LA. And so it's difficult to get up here, but I believe you come up to visit your mother, don't you, on occasion?
I have a friend.
Yeah, but so anyway, this is perfect. You don't have to leave your house.
It is perfect.
So, and Ellen is a traveling photographer. I see your postings on Facebook from all over the world. It's just fantastic.
Yeah.
And your wonderful photographs too. So
I'll be glad when we get back to that. I'll tell you right now.
yes, yes. So anyway, those are our judges. Thank you all three once again. And I'll turn it back to Bill.
All right. Well, let's, with no further ado, get at this thing. I'm going to turn on my screen share and we're going to start a slide presentation and hear comments from our judges. We had 73 entries this time. Want to make sure I'm not seeing any of you at this point. If everything is good, that's fine. If you aren't a judge, it would be appreciated if you mute your microphones. And here we are with our standard scoring information. I think everybody's seen that a few times. And we have altered reality. For our members, the judges are aware that this was a special assignment with the subject of glass. And with that said, we'll get started with the first one. It's called Art Glass, and the judge critiquing is Ellen Clark.
Can I just start?
Yep.
You can hear me? Okay. Well, it's obviously glass, and it's very pretty. I would say that it's not real exciting, but there's something very pretty about it. It could be something that would perhaps fill a room that perhaps had those colors in it, but it's not really terribly exciting. And I'm just assuming it's glass. I mean, I don't think it's real obvious, but it's very attractive.
Our next image is Distancing. This is by critique by Ralph Clevenger.
Yeah, you know, right off the bat, I really like this picture. I love the abstract qualities. I love the little bubbles in the glass, I'm assuming. But what threw me was down in the lower right-hand corner, there was an attempt, I think, to make a story about this. And I think the problem is I have no idea what this is a picture of. It might be something related to testing for the disease and everything, but there's no way for us to know that. So personally, I think it's a much better picture without the double exposure or the view through the glass of the woman with the mask. So I don't think the story makes the connection as well as the image by itself.
All right. Our next image is Glass Bubble. This is critiqued by Say Dempsey.
All right, so clearly we've got something that is nearly monochromatic in tone. We have a lot of blue going on here, but with like a nice little sprite of some yellows or some warmer colors, which works out really well. I am a sucker for movement within images, so that helps. I think in this particular one, I would actually, for my own personal taste, like to see a little bit more movement. The waves that you see on the lower right-hand corner are really enjoyable to me, and then the reflection on the surface works really well. But as an image in general, I don't know exactly what I'm looking at. I know that it's supposed to be a glass bubble, but had I not been told that, I wouldn't have picked that up at all. Whether that's important or not, no, I don't know. It's probably not important. But for me, I would like just a little bit more of a detail or a clue of what's going on in here, because in the reflection, it looks like it's almost like a cityscape. So I'm struggling to know what it is that I'm looking at, and that would kind of bring it home a little bit more for me.
Okay, I'm just realizing that we have the scores to announce as we do this. So I'm going to go back for the first couple of them and have Zoltan announce the scores afterwards. And we'll do that immediately following from this point on.
Art glass, the total was 17. Distancing was 18. Glass bubble is also 18.
All right, and our next image is Glass by Chiuli at Montreal, and this one is Ellen Clark. Oh, I'm sorry, Ralph.
Oh, okay. All right. So
Wait a minute, time out. My issue, I'm dueling screens here. It is Ellen Clark that is assigned to this image. Ralph, you're next.
Oh, it is.
all right. That's what I thought.
I thought, okay, go for it. Well, if you've ever seen a Chihuly, I mean, it's kind of clearly Chihuly. The problem with this to me is you just have nowhere to look. There's nowhere to focus. There's stuff going on. There's some light, there's a lot of dark, there's some kind of light, but there's just nothing that your eye can quite light on. It's kind of interesting, but it's just too busy. It needs some kind of something where your eye can focus rather than going from one curly cue to the next curly cue to the next. It's just too busy, I think.
Is Zoltan the score?
Score on glass by Chihuly Montreal was 17.
Right, the next image is Liquid Amber, and this is critiqued by Ralph.
Yeah, I really like this picture. I think it's abstract, but the colors and the fact that some of the bubbles are in focus and others aren't gives the image a lot of depth, a lot of excuse me, a lot of 3D look to it. So I think you did a very nice job with this picture.
The score on Liquid Amber was 18.
Next image is Melted Glass, and this is when Say.
Thank you. This one I really like to get lost in the peeling of the layers. I'm a person that actually does like to peel things back, so this one does pull me in because of that. The nice sharp focus on the edge was a very good choice, especially with the shallow depth of field. The part that I really like about this image, and I'm not sure what's creating it, are the ovals, the elongated circles on the left-hand side of the image. They don't show up to me immediately, but when I see them, it's a nice surprise to come across. I feel like it could use a little bit more contrast though.
Okay, Melted Glass scored 20.
Next image is My Favorite Glasses, critiqued by Ellen Clark.
Oh, you have to get a chuckle out of this. I mean, they got an idea, and it's certainly different. I will say that. I don't know that it's the most successful, but I got a kick out of it. I don't know aesthetically if I think it's all that great, but I just think it's kind of a fun picture, a fun idea. It's kind of stretching the category a little bit, but you know, it's I don't know. I'm a little conflicted about it. I mean, but definitely you have to get a chuckle out of it.
All right, my favorite glasses scored 18.
Next image is Playing with Glass. This is from Ralph.
Okay, so the focus and color and exposure look really good on this one. I kind of wish that you had stuck with just one of the glasses, you know, flying through the space it's in. I think the upside down part of the whole thing takes away from, I think, a very interesting element in the glass that's right side up. So just too much. Kind of stop, keep it simple and graphic, and I think it's a more successful picture.
Playing with Glass scored 18.
Next image is To the Point. This is critiqued by Say.
Thank you. This one is very graphic to me, and as it has graphic elements. And I noticed that you're working with the edges quite a bit within this image. You can see that you have nearly a tangent at the top part that's pushing out. It does, as it kind of waves back and forth on the left-hand side, that line does actually come towards and off the edge, which is something I would have encouraged with this particular one. Even the top one, I would have gone off surface on it. But we have to really be careful where the point is pointing, because that is definitely directing the eye out of the image. Now you do have the circular shapes sort of keeping you pulled back in. You have the pattern repetition that's working really well within it also. So all in all, I think it's very well done. I'm not sure off the top of my head how it was done, but I would actually like to see it break the edges just a little bit more, but not at the point.
To the Point scored 20. And Bill, do you want to go through the accepted ones?
Yes, you can. Do you want to read them, Zoltan?
Oh, sure. I can. I thought you would. Do you want to show them, or should I just?
Yeah, I'll
read
show them. They're ready to go.
Okay. We have 7 accepted images. The first one is Distancing by Carrie Topliff. Glass Bubble by Patty Gutschall. Liquid Amber, Stuart Wilson.
Okay.
Melted Glass, Chris Seaton. My Favorite Glasses, Avo Court. Playing with Glass, Ines Roberts. And To the Point, Judith Barrett.
Our next category is Nature. And we will start with Australian Protea. And this is critiqued by, who's up?
Me.
Ellen, yes, thank you.
I love the color of this, and I like it's a cool plant, and it's just everything is. I don't know. I like the picture. I think the idea of taking the corner and not doing the plant right in the center, but doing part of it works pretty well in this case. The colors are good. The leaves are good. I think the positioning is good. I think it's a pretty nice picture of a very different plant.
Okay, Australian Protea scored 22.
Next image is Backlit Kella, critiqued by Ralph.
Yeah, this is beautiful. I love the symmetry of this. These flowers are just classic flowers to photograph. One of the things about flowers is that they're already beautiful. So you do have to work at keeping that beauty in your image. And I think you did a nice job here. Just if you're going fully for symmetry, just be careful that the spacing on the sides is close to perfect. It's a little bit closer on the image's left side. And I think the lighting you did very well because I think it's backlit somewhat, and I think that was a great choice because flower petals are translucent. Very nice job.
Backlit Kala scored 20.
Next image is Blue Heron, and this is Say.
I want to compliment you on getting down to the heron's eye level to photograph as opposed to being standing tall and looking down at the heron. That makes a very much an interactive image for the viewers. Also that the eyes are nice and sharp. I know these guys don't hold still, so that's a little bit of a challenge to do. Part of this image that distracts me is how saturated the yellow grass is at the bottom, even to the point of overexposure. And the open shade has the higher Kelvin, so that's tending to run a little bit blue. And so those two are popping off of each other quite a bit, and it takes my attention away from the heron. With that said, thank you so much for having the heron look into the image and not out of the image by being just a little bit, well, I guess the eye is pretty close to center, but I'm still going to call it that there is room for the heron to look into the image. So I really appreciate that. So my leading line and the implied line doesn't get pulled out of the image.
Blue Heron scored 18.
Next image is Bobcat in Los Padres, critiqued by Ellen.
Well, the bobcat is great, but what I don't understand is why the photographer didn't pull things over. I mean, definitely I would get rid of, let's see, is everybody looking at it the same way I am? I guess you are.
Yes.
From the left, I would get rid of a lot of the left-hand side. I would definitely have pulled in on that bobcat. I don't think you need that tree trunk that's coming up. I don't think you need the sticks, the twigs. You don't need any of that, in my opinion. Just focus on the cat. I mean, his eyes are okay. Maybe the back of him isn't totally, in focus, but his eyes sure are, and he's looking right at you. So I think there's just way too much distracting stuff. Focus on the cat.
Bobcat in Los Padres scored 18.
Next image is Concentration, critiqued by Ralph.
It's always, I mean, this is in the wild, so it's always amazing to see the differences between lions in the wild. You can tell it's in the wild because look at his nose, her nose. Ones in the zoo are all nice and clean. I think one of the things to remember with images like this is your color. The color is really green, probably because it's on green grass, but in your post-processing, you should bring those yellows back up and neutralize that green. It's pretty easy to do with a white balance tool. You can just white balance right on the nose and then make adjustments for that. So for me, that's a technical issue, is the off color. Your focus is a little tiny bit back focus. You'll notice the focus is on her back eye. And just like in portraiture for humans, you kind of want to get that focus on the front, but that's pretty tough because she's moving. So she's moved out of the plane of focus. But overall, nice tight shot. This lion was close.
Okay, Concentration scored 20.
Next image is Epithelium 5, critiqued by Say.
Thank you. Lovely image. I am a stickler with flowers in my classes, in that there's a long history of flower photography, and that history says flowers have to be perfect, and if they're not perfect, then you need to correct for them in post-production. And when I looked at all the flower shots, I took a look to make sure that there were, everything was nice and clean. And with this one, it looks very clean to me. Your framing is works really well. The leading lines pull directly into the flowers. You have you're using odd numbers, which is very complementary in photography, in that you have the 3 open and then the 2 closed, but that will even equal up to 5. All in all, I think it's a really lovely image. The only thing that I would recommend is probably cropping I see it's a square, but maybe cropping a little bit from the top and the right so that it just becomes a little tighter. Not by much, you still want to have a breadth of room, but it's beautiful. Thank you.
Epithelium 5 scored 21.
Next image is Getting His Feet Wet, a critique by Ellen.
Well, I think I would have cropped in on this, because I will tell you, I don't know, I have a small screen, so maybe it's not as obvious on a big, on a big screen, but everything is out of focus except its eye is not. And I had to enlarge it in order to find that out. And I think it would have had more impact had it really been obvious that the eye was sharp, because otherwise everything's, out of focus. It is. I mean, the water, that makes sense. It's wings, okay. But the fact that the eye is sharp is really important. And I think that if it had been cropped differently, been tighter crop, you could have seen that. And I think it would have been important to the overall image. And you don't need that much foam anyway, in my opinion.
Okay, Getting His Feet Wet scored 19.
Next image is Gossip, critique by Ralph.
Okay, well, you did a nice job on your black and white conversion. Pretty much full tonal range there, which is good. Nice contrast. It's a great scene. I love having the 2 pups down in the foreground and the mother's sort of arguing with the other female, looking on. It's busy, but it's telling a really good story. So because of that, I think your composition works really well. So again, long lens shot, probably taken up at the up near San Simeon there. So I think you did a really nice job. The timing was great on capturing the behavior going on.
Gossip scored 22.
Next image is Hello Tourist. This is from Say.
Excellent job with symmetry. You have your leading lines that are pulling in from the shoulder up to the eyes. I do wish the eyes were in a nice tight, sharp focus. I'm not seeing motion blur, so it might be that the lens wasn't set to its sweet spot for this particular shot, or possibly it was a kit lens, and so this is as sharp as it can get. But when you're photographing animals, you really want to try and get those eyes as tack sharp as possible. And it would really, like those eyelashes, to be able to see those eyelashes would be just a nice little treat. But all in all, to have a zebra staring down the barrel of your lens, excellent. That's good job to get in there and capture that.
Hello Tourist scored 22.
Next image is Into the Storm, critique by Ellen.
Well, I mean, really, how could you not like this image? I want to know. I mean, here you got mom and I'm assuming, and her 2 kids, and the one's Mr. Oh yeah, I'm gonna go ahead, and the other one's kind of dawdling along in the background. I just really like this image. I mean, I think it's it's sort of like a mother and kids anywhere. That's what I like about it. It's just, it has a really nice feel about it. Plus, it's well taken and it's well composed. And anyway, I like this shot a lot.
Okay, Into the Storm scored 24.
Next image is Leaf Details, Ralph, critiqued.
Nice job. A shot like this kind of needs everything in focus across the whole frame. It's a texture shot, maybe, fine art, put a print up. And I do like the way you've oriented it, regardless of how you actually shot it, because it has the light areas at the top and the dark areas at the bottom. So it gives a lot of balance to the scene. So, you know, overall, I think you did an excellent job here of creating a nice image of these leaves.
Okay, leaf details scored 20.
Next image is leopard, seal, and pup. Critique from Say.
Thank you. The decisive moment on this is working out pretty well, both with the mother and her yelling. I don't know what noise they make, but anyway, with her mouth open, but especially with the baby flipping upside down to look at you at the camera. So I can understand why you'd want to create the shot. If there is any detail left in the snow, it would be really nice to have that texture. It may or may not be there, but that would be the only thing that I would work on. And your choice to do a nice little vignette, a subtle vignette on the corners, I think also works out beautifully, because it really brings the eye into your subject matter who are in the center. Thank you.
Leopard, seal, and pup scored 21.
Next image is looking for lunch, and this is critiqued by Ellen.
I looked at this up close, and I mean, obviously it's a nice shot. I like the fact that you can see the droplets of water and all of that. But if you look at it closely, it almost looks over sharpened. I'm not sure what was going on, but there's a funny, especially right around the head, the beak and the eye. It looks like I'm not very good on some of this technology, but it looks to me like it was maybe over sharpened. It's a little bit peculiar looking, though. I mean, certainly it's a good, got this bird at a good, with the wings out. And like I said, I particularly like that you've got all the droplets, but I would question if maybe it was over sharpened.
Looking for lunch scored 21.
Next image is nudibranch, and this is critiqued by Ralph.
Nudibranch.
Nudibranch.
That's okay. Yeah. These creatures are amazing. It's an underwater photograph. It could have been done in a tide pool, and with this plant that's in the background, that does occur in tide pools, but it probably was in a shallow environment. The lighting is great, and focus and everything looks really good. So again, kind of like flowers, you already have a beautiful subject, and it's sort of your responsibility to make sure all the technical aspects fall into place to show that off. I like the composition. You could have maybe taken in that upper left, you see a bright area that's a highlight on one of the plants. You could certainly burn that down a little bit, and that would help keep the eye focused in the middle. And then personally, I think you could have made this a little more dynamic by rotating the image a little bit in post even, so that it's not going kind of almost straight across the frame, but a little bit more at a diagonal. You'd have to play and see if it looked better going down or going up, but I think that might make it look a little more active.
Okay, nudibranch scored 21.
Next image is orange cluckvine, and this is critiqued by Say.
Thank you. Personally, I really love how this orange pops off the dark background. Even the blue background, the colors are somewhat opposite on the color wheel, and so they really do help to push the flowers to come forward. They almost feel like they're popping off my screen. The touch of the water or the water droplets is nice. The shallow depth of field was also an excellent choice, and I think you're filling the frame beautifully with this one. I'm not seeing any over sharpening anywhere, so I say you have a great shot here. Good job.
All right, orange clock line scored 20.
Next image is Protea, and it is critiqued by Ellen.
It's kind of a simple image. I mean, the plant is lovely, and I think the fact that it has the dark background really pops it. You wouldn't want anything else going on. I mean, because there's a lot going on within the plant itself. I mean, it's sharp, and I think the whole thing should be sharp, in my opinion. It's a very pretty, very attractive depiction of a very colorful and interesting plant. Well done.
All right, Protea scored 21.
Next image is Rainflower. This is critiqued by Ralph.
Okay, one of the things to remember about leaves is that they have a waxy coating on them, so they give a lot of specular highlights. So you want to try and minimize that as much as possible, and I think you did a pretty good job. You got a lot of specular highlights on that lower leaf. And then the lighting is coming from, I'm just kind of guessing here, but directly above it looks like. And it looks like it was either raining or the sprinkler was on. I think that's a nice touch, having all the water drops. But obviously, the top part of the flower is pretty hot now because that's where the light's coming from. Super shallow depth of field works good. You are focused on the stamen, so I think that's the best. If you know how to do it and you ever get a chance to do focus stacking, this is a great subject for focus stacking. But I think what you need to remember is the lighting. So I would have backlit this thing more to let that light come through the flower. And that might have helped prevent some of these highlights kind of distracting the viewer's eye.
Rainflower scored 16.
On the next image, this will also be critiqued by Ralph. This is Red Infusion. This is 2 critiques in a row because of some naming and alphabetic, some title change and image changes since we put the list together. So everyone still has the same number of critiques, but we're just doing 2 by Ralph currently.
Okay. First of all, this is a really interesting plant. So, I mean, so much of what makes these pictures interesting is the subject you choose. But the problem is that it's a very complex scene. And so if you think about this, come over to the left side and sort of draw a vertical, in the left third of the picture. And just think how much more interesting that picture would be because you've eliminated all this stuff on the right that's kind of junky and it's got highlights and stuff. So then you just have the patterns of these lobes on this plant. And then all this, the mulch and everything that they put down. I love all the colors. So again, it's taking the time to make those compositions that are the strongest you can with the subject that you're shooting.
All right, Red Infusion scored 18.
Next image is Roaring Mountain, critiqued by Say.
This one works out really well as far as starting to work with the zone system, especially at the bottom part of the image. You really do have some really nice bright whites there. You have some very dark, even black without detail plants. And then as you move up, it kind of moves into like a little bit of a muddy gray. So I'd recommend a higher contrast or at least brighter clouds where the clouds are about in the center of the frame, and then keep the contrast nice and high for the trees that are at the top part next to the sky. One of the things I'm seeing in this image though is there's a grid, and I don't know what's creating that, but I would definitely, if for the photographer, whoever you are, figure out what caused your grid and remove it, because it's very distracting, this particular image. It doesn't really give me a sense of wanting to approach it. It very much tries to push me away.
Okay, Roaring Mountain scored 20.
Next image is Running Against the Wind, critiqued by Ellen.
I mean, okay. Well, for starters, I think I would straighten the horizon, what what this bird is on, and the color bothers me. I mean, I would rather have it a sharp black and white. It's kind of this muddy kind of. I don't know if I'm not sure what the situation was, but I would definitely want to unmuddy it. How, however you could do that and straighten out where the bird is. And I don't know. I mean, it's just those two things alone bother me enough that if those were straightened out, then maybe I could look at it with a little more. It just bothered, the color bothers me. I mean, it just doesn't do a thing for me. And like I say, I always think that things should be, I mean, you don't have to go overboard about straightening, but this guy really doesn't. I mean, it needs to be straight, in my opinion, it needs to be straight.
Okay, Running Against the Wind scored 19.
Next image is Swirl, critiqued by Say.
This is a great time to capture this image, or this seal, or sorry if it's the sea lion, I can't tell the difference, I'm from Kansas.
Sea lion. It's a sea lion.
Thank you. So, so it's a great time to capture this sea lion, especially with the swirl that is coming around, and so he's kind of captured within his own frame, his or her own frame. The one thing that throws me is that I'm not able to make a good contact with the sea lion because the eyes are not sharp, and so keep working and keep playing with that. I know they don't hold still, and the ocean doesn't hold still, and you might be on a boat that's not holding still, so you've got a lot going against you, but just put your camera on continuous shutter and keep shooting and keep your eye out and watch out for things like this. If it had been sharp, it would have been like bam, it would have been really, really good. And the next thing that I'd like to recommend is that you just put bump up your contrast just a touch more. You can get a little bit more texture out of this image if you just kick the contrast, especially you bring your blacks in a little bit more, you'll be able to get some better texture out of it.
Okay, Swirl scored 22. So for the nature category, we have 10 accepted images. The first one is Australian Protea by Stephen Sherrill. And Epiphyllum 5 by Innes Roberts. And we have Gossip, Chris Seaton. So we had Gossip by Chris Seaton. Hello Tourist, Bob Wagoner. Into the Storm, Bob Rottenberg. Leopard Seal and Pup, Jeff Lipschitz. Looking for Lunch, Bill Hallier. Nudibranch, Stuart Wilson. Protea, Ron Williams. And the last one is Swirl by Lorraine Woodman.
That'll bring us to the open category. Judges, you all doing okay for continuing on?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, here we go. The first image for open is All Aboard, and the critique is by Ellen.
I love this shot. I really do. I love this shot. I think it's I mean, that's the cover of a book on ships as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I like the whole thing. I mean, it's very dramatic. Everything is tack sharp. Even though the ship is dead center, what they've been smart enough to do is they've taken the rope and put that got that off center, which then stops with the centeritis of the thing. And then all these little guys in their little red outfits getting on the ship. I mean, I don't know how much they set it up, or if they just lucked out, but whatever it is, I think it's a really smashing shot. I like this. It's very dramatic. You know, it really draws your eye in. Cool shot.
Okay, all aboard scored 26.
Yeah, it deserves it, I think.
Next image is Bare Exposure, critique by Ralph.
Great composition. Love your use of the foreground and the fact that there's light coming in from, I don't know. I mean, if you set up a flash over there and did this, that's just really, really nice. It could just be some sunshine breaking through some clouds and coming through, but if you'll notice, everything else is kind of cloudy. So I just think you did a really nice job of composition with this scene. The only thing I can say to maybe improve a scene like this is, especially if you lit it, which again, I don't know if you did, but to try and also light maybe those the rocks that are covered in those they're either little anemones, the aggregate anemones, or barnacles back there, just to give some texture to take us through the scene as we move through those rocks. But if you didn't light it, then you had no choice. So anyway, just excellent job with composition here.
And Bare Exposure scored 20.
Next image is Broadway, Los Angeles, critique by Say.
So when I saw this originally the first time, I took a little bit of time looking at this one, and it's because I was trying to figure out if you're using filters or if you just took your contrast straight up. But for me, it feels like it's, and this might be the look that you're going for sure, but for me, it feels like it's a bit over processed. And so if you brought it back a little bit, it would be more interesting to me. Right now, for me right now, it's more about the process and how it was created as opposed to the shot. And if you take a look at the shot, it's a really neat shot. You've got the shadows, you got the fire, ladders, or whatever you call them, escapes. And then you got the windows, and it's all vertical, vertical, vertical. And then of course you have this wonderful graffiti going on that works out really well. And I went through and I kind of was checking out like how somebody would go in and tag all of this. But the process itself has just become so crunchy to me, visually crunchy, that it keeps me from really getting in there and exploring it. And so I think if you could just back it up a little bit, you're really going to invite people to come in and stay for a while.
Okay, Broadway, Los Angeles scored 21.
Next image is Fallen Matriarch, critique by Ellen.
This is obviously a beautiful image. The only thing that bugs me is that it is so dark. I wish it could be a little bit, just a little bit lighter, so that I don't lose some of the detail in it. It just, I don't know if it's possible or if it wouldn't have worked out. And I don't generally shoot this kind of thing, so I'm no expert when it's star stuff. But it obviously is a beautiful, beautiful image. It's just that it's not popping for me. And I'm thinking that maybe in post-processing, there could have been something that would have made it come a little more alive. I mean, but like I say, it's not my genre at all. So, you know, really can't say.
All right, Fallen Matriarch scored 23.
Next image is Heavy Lifting, critique by Ralph.
Okay, once again, you know, so much of what makes an image successful is the subject you chose. And, you know, I've always had a conflict with photographing other people's art because it's their art. But I think what you did in terms of not coming in too tight and just showing the graffiti painting, but showing where it's painted, and the fact that it's a freeway underpass and everything, and it's got some pretty strong lines. I think those things helps makes this an interesting picture. two things bug me, and one thing is this bush up here in the upper left. This is a real architectural cityscape thing. So I know you didn't want to cut off the hand, but I mean, maybe some cropping like that just to get rid of that bush might work. And then that darn garbage bag bothers the heck out of me. You know, maybe not, you know, you might have been able to move that. I don't know. I don't have any problem doing that kind of stuff. But, you know, you might want to try cropping this image to get rid of the bush and see how you like it.
Okay, heavy lifting scored 21.
Next image is Isla Vista Surfer, critique by Say.
I'm really enjoying this image. I started out by seeing this story, or a story for me, you know, very quickly, with a gentleman who is on his way to go surf. And then there's a really nice, and he's a third of the way in, he's moving into the image itself. And then he creates an implied line, which brings us to the bench, which is where I would be, you know, enjoying sitting and watching the ocean. Thank you so much for making your horizon line on the ocean level. As we know, water has to adhere to the rules of gravity, so big bodies of water should be level. And then the play between the texture, the active texture of the gold grass in the foreground, and the more subtle and subdued blue in the background in the sky also work out. And good job on the model for bringing the blue surfboard that will work with that blue sky. So that's lovely also. I think there's a lot of things that you could do with this photograph, and being that it's a panorama also pulls me in.
Okay, Isla Vista Surfer scored 20.
Next image is It's a Stay-at-Home Order, critique by Ellen.
Well, this is a very dramatic, obviously, very active, very dramatic image. It keeps you going, and the fact that these guys are all sort of in a circle really helps to keep your eye. You don't tend to go flying off somewhere at somebody who's off in a corner. Everybody is pretty much huddled together. And that was a very dramatic, very interesting image. And whoever did it, I think, couldn't have been easy, because you've got all sorts of, you know, very brights and very dark. And I think by and large, yeah, there might be some things that could be toned down a little brightness wise. Maybe the whatever the script or whatever the guy is holding up maybe is a little bit bright. But basically, I think it's pretty well done for something that's that much contrast.
All right, it's a stay-at-home order, scored 21.
Next image is Japanese Bridge, critique by Ralph Clevenger.
Okay, great subject. Looks really interesting. Just a tip, generally speaking, in landscapes and architectural cityscapes, things like that, you want to try and avoid those darn washed out skies. They're just, you know, boring. So there are a couple of ways to do that. You can look for trees or branches or things that'll come in and cover most of the sky, and that way it'll frame your picture. And sometimes it just means you just step back because there's a tree behind you or something. So that can solve it. Or you might have to, you know, crop the image. I don't know how it would work, but there's a lot of texture in here with all the stonework and woodwork, and this building on the left is really interesting. So you might be able to crop in tight enough to eliminate at least most of that sky. The last choice, which I don't know if you're allowed to do, but see, I would go get a nice sky with puffy white clouds and stick it in there.
Okay, Japanese Bridge scored 19.
Next image is Lantern Reflection, critique by Say.
So I love reflections. I think they're really fun. And so I was pulled into this nice and very easily, very quickly. And then as I started to look around, I see in the right-hand side, it looks like possibly you were doing a little spotting or trying to retouch part of the image because there's little circles or circular shape markings. And so that takes me away. I don't know what you're trying to get rid of, but now that I see that, I get distracted pretty easily from that. It also looks like, and I'm not positive, but the rope looks like it's starting to pixelate. So possibly you're zooming in a little bit tighter or more than the image itself can handle, or possibly it's just projected more than the image can handle. And if you look right along the rope edge on the line, especially below or above, depending on the angle, the lantern itself, you'll start to see some glow along the edge of the rope, and that tells me that you're going just a touch too much on sharpening. The contrast on those edges is just a little too high. But don't get me wrong, I like the shot. You got a lot going for it. There's just some technical things that need to be taken care of.
All right, lantern reflection scored 20.
Next image is No Parking, San Francisco, critique by Ellen.
There's a part of this that I kind of like, that kind of bleak, not terribly nice part of town, and kind of a, kind of cloudy night, and that is sort of a little bit spooky dooky. But the problem to me is that there's too much empty space right there in the middle. I mean, okay, you've got the car, but that's over there, and something else is over there. And your eye goes to where there's nothing. So I think it would have worked better if something had been in the middle area. I don't know what. I mean, I don't know how, maybe the car angled differently or something, because you really are focusing on something where there is nothing. And yet it's kind of a cool scene in a kind of, I don't know, sort of a kind of seedy way. I just think there was more that could have been done.
All right, No Parking San Francisco scored 18.
Next image is Peonies, critique by Ralph.
Yeah, I think you did a beautiful job here. I love this watercolor texture that you overlaid or whatever you did or shot. No, I don't think you shot through it. But anyway, whatever you did, I think it worked very well. I love the pastels. I mean, this is definitely something someone would hang on a wall. It's very summer, spring light, very uplifting, great use of colors. The composition is great. You got the 3 flowers. The center one is just off center. The center flower is just off center, which makes it very strong. And your soft lighting, I think you did a great job here.
Okay, Peonies scored 22.
Next image is Quarantine at Sandyland, critique by Say.
So I understand this is quarantine and you're working on that idea and that story, but for myself, it pulls me in. You have your leading lines that pull me in. I really just want a stronger subject within the shot. You got a beautiful day, you got a lot of sky, you got a big open beach, and I know the story that you're trying to create, but I can look at this, or I feel like I can look at this within 2 seconds, understand everything that's going on, and then move on to the next image. And so there's just nothing here that's going to keep me to stay here. Although I like the idea on the story of it, but it's just not going to make me stay.
Quarantine at Sandyland scored 20.
Red Rose, critique by Ellen Clark.
Well, it's a beautiful color and it's a beautiful rose. But if it's going to be a single flower, and I don't know what the issue was at the bottom, I would have the whole flower. The fact that it's chopped off at the bottom bothers me, because it is just a single flower. It's not, there seems to be no reason for that. Even if you had to pull back a little, seems to me the whole flower should be in the photo. So than that, I mean, it's gorgeous color and all that, but I think you need the whole thing.
Okay, Red Rose scored 18.
Next image is Remembrance, critique by Ralph Clevenger.
It's a strong subject for sure, and I think you did a really fantastic job of composition. The fact that the trees are reflected in the surface of the memorial, and then you have the same type of trees showing in that upper left corner, makes this a type of picture that you sit and look at for a while, trying to sort of figure out what's going on. Are those the, and I know you probably didn't do it on purpose, but if you look at that tree on the left, it even sort of looks like it just continues up past the monument. The flat half mast tells the story. Otherwise, some people might not understand what they're looking at. So, and then this muted color that you chose, this sort of desaturated, moody color. Overall, you did everything right with this picture.
Okay, Remembrance scored 19.
Next image is Running River, critique by Wendy, by Say. Sorry, Say.
That's okay. You can pick any of those names. It's totally fine. This is processed beautifully. I particularly enjoy your choice of your slower shutter speed, but it's not so slow that I'm absolutely losing all the information. Getting to the eye level of the bird looks really good. I'm not sure that I see a catch light in the eye, but it's not necessary. While the bird is lovely, the part that I really enjoy about this image is the color of the orange against the blue in the background of the water. That just really pulls me in, and then I basically, from that point, I go down the waterfall and then I circle back around to the bird, and so I get into this loop of looking around and around in the image. The part that touches me or makes me stumble a little bit is the branches, which, you know, they're there. There's not much you can do, but just so you know, that's something that I wish wasn't there, but that's just how nature is. So I'm just gonna have to accept it. But thank you. It's a beautiful image.
Running River scored 21.
Next image, Santa Barbara Light, critique by Ellen.
This is a really, I think, well-processed, kind of spooky dooky kind of feeling. It's kind of like a little bit ominous, a little bit like a storm's coming in. The extreme sharpness of the cliff and the stuff on the cliff, and then the moody kind of clouds I like. It has a real feel of weather, you know, weather, and kind of a little bit gloomy, a little bit scary. I liked it.
All right, Santa Barbara Light scored 20.
Next image, Scallop and Balls, Ralph, critique by Ralph.
Yeah, it's an interesting subject. It's it's complex. I mean, there's a lot of elements in here, and they're not naturally connected. It looks like something that you would put in on a shelf or on a table, showing these glass fishing net balls in the open scallop. So part of the issue is really none of the balls are in focus, and they really are the subject. The scallop is the vessel that's holding them, and the focus is on the foreground, on the scallop. So again, be careful about where you put your focus, because that's where the eye is always going to go first. And then we're going to go, you know, well, I shouldn't say that. The eye always goes to the brightest thing first, and then we look for what's in focus. So both of those happen to be the same thing. So I think you did a nice job of lighting, though. You got a nice soft light, and that's great for lighting glass. But I think you could have done something maybe with the glass balls and not worry about the scallop.
Scallop and Balls scored 17.
Six Swans Swimming, critique by Say.
When I read your title, I actually chuckled because of the six swans swimming. Nonetheless, again, good job getting down to the nice eye level. You were fortunate enough to have still enough water, yet the movement of the swans themselves rippling out to the viewer. This pattern repetition helps to pull your viewer into the swans. Your shallow depth of field also works really well to keep the attention on the swans. The division of space works out beautifully, and I'm not seeing any vignetting in the corners, and you could do a tiny, not a lot, just a tiny bit of vignette if you wanted to, but all in all, it's just a nice, lovely image.
6 swans swimming, scored 21.
Next image is Spring Portrait, critiqued by Ellen.
Well, that's just a really pretty picture. I don't know what to say. It's a really beautiful plant. It's beautifully taken. It's sharp as a tack. It just couldn't be prettier. You know, I think the fact that it's taken against a black background really points out the color. I like the colors of it. I mean, I like the green and the pink, and it's just a lovely image.
Okay, Spring Portrait scored 22.
Next image is The Cure, critiqued by Ralph.
Okay, so there's obviously some humor here, which is really good. And then yes, you almost don't need the person because you have this really cool storefront with some really sort of old-fashioned signage and lamps and everything with the great Coca-Cola sign. So for me, it's not about the person; it's about that sign. So for me, the person doesn't really help the shot that much. I mean, I think you could come in, do a straight-on shot, and make this a very graphic architectural detail scene. Your lighting works fine for it. So anyway, it's just a personal choice, but something to keep in mind. You got to think about your subject. What do you like? What is it that you like? Why are you taking the picture? And then sort of keep taking pictures until you get that narrowed down.
Okay, The Cure scored 19.
This is the Scarf, critiqued by Say.
This one is so close for me for just really nailing it. I really enjoy the texture and the background that you have, the nice smooth shallow depth of field, and the monochromatic tonality works really well. What I get stuck on is that it just feels propped and not a natural flow. With a nice light, was it a scarf like this, you could, I want to encourage you to take it and just kind of set up your shot, get your camera on a tripod, know where it's going to land, and then throw up the scarf higher and watch it float down into the shot and photograph it there so you can get some really beautiful flow from that scarf. I know you can nail this. With it being tacked up on the left and the right hand side at the top, it just kind of pulls me up and out of the frame that way. And it's so close from just being really, really good. So whoever took this, I really would encourage you to just kind of play around with it more. Try to go less structural and more natural.
The Scarf scored 19.
Wild Pig on the Beach, critiqued by Ellen.
I'd like to know how close this guy was to this pig. I don't know that I'd be that anxious to get quite that near to him. I mean, I don't know. Those things can be nasty. Anyway, I'd say he got clear eyes and a good portrait of a pig. I mean, I don't know if he used a flash or what the deal was, but anyway, it certainly, if you want to see head of a wild pig, they did a bang up job.
Okay, Wild Pig on the Beach scored 20.
Zion Narrows, critique by Ralph.
Compositionally, you did a fine job, you know, using rule of thirds and everything. There's nice texture. The rock has texture. Color contrast works really well. Part of, you know, I look at these almost as exercises to practice composing imagery when you're out in the field shooting. But then it comes down to a subject. Well, is this, you know, interesting? Does it, it could be telling a bit of a story depending on if words were attached to it. So keep that in mind. And it's been done so much that you need to kind of see if you can come up with a creative angle on this. So just, you find a nice subject, you just got to keep shooting until something might work.
Right, Zion Narrows scored 20. So for the open category, we have 9 accepted images. The first one is All Aboard.
Uh-oh, okay. That's not up there. We'll show it later.
Okay, that is, I think that's Jeff's Peonies, 22. And
there's All Aboard.
there it is. Okay, all right. All Aboard, Bob Rottenberg. The next one is Broadway, Los Angeles, Zoltan Pushkash. Fallen Matriarch, Stuart Wilson. Heavy Lifting, Sue Dodds. It's a Stay-at-Home Order, George Wellick. Peonies, okay, we're gonna skip that one, all right. Running River, Innes Roberts. Six Swans Swimming, Bruce Straits. And Spring Portrait, Charlie Henry.
Okay, sorry about the order mix up there. That brings us to our last category, people. The first image is Birdman, critique by Say.
I love this image. And for street photography, I think it works out really well, even to the point where you have a bird that's on his arm, you know, clocking the camera, like, hey, what are you doing? And then even the one that's leaving the scene in the upper right-hand corner, so that you have activity going up there. And then this guy is a character. I mean, he's got his umbrella, he's got his bag, he's got something on his nose. I'm not sure what it was. And that is the one thing I realized, it took me a while. I'm like, is that really something on his nose, or is that something behind his head and his nose is shaped that way? And I decided finally it was something on his nose, which is unfortunate. That's the one thing that distracts me within this image, even though it is a true street photography. And so clearly you can't ask him to remove it, but I wish it wasn't there for you. But all in all, it's really great that you got, down to his level and he's looking off into the middle distance in whatever thoughts he's having. So it's really lovely. The processing on it also looks excellent. So good job.
Okay, Birdman scored 21.
Next image, Colors of India, critique by Ellen.
This is, India, you can't miss. Key West, they just love color. So, and this is, you've just got a whole family of, or whatever they are, a whole party of Indians in wonderfully colored outfits. But to me, honestly, it's kind of like a snapshot, really. It's like everybody's gone to the picnic, and now it's okay. Everybody get up. We want to have everybody in the picture. So, well, it certainly is colorful and it's fun to look at. I can't say that it's really grabs me as a striking photo, more because it really does, it makes me think of, like I say, like a picnic or, a family gathering. It's almost like a snapshot, something that would go into your, into a memory book.
All right, Colors of India scored 23.
Yeah. What do I know?
The next image is Escapee, critique by Ralph.
Okay, well, I have no idea what's going on here, but I love the picture. I like the lighting inside, whatever this is. The train, maybe. The lighting inside's great. That split lighting on his face, and you've got a little bit of light in the background that's providing some depth in there. The only thing, and then everything on the outside is kind of dark, and I like the composition. The only thing that you might be able to do to improve it is there's a white highlight behind his head back there. You could maybe burn that down a little bit, and that, because that's a little bit distracting, because your eye keeps going back to that white thing. Other than that, this is one of those types of images that might need some words to explain what's going on here. But I think the lighting, composition, and capture is done very well.
All right, Escapee scored 18.
Next image is Fashion Show, critique by Say.
When I saw this one the first time, I spent a little bit of time with it. And the reason for that is because of where the focus is. I really feel like it needs to be on the models because they are the activity that is going on there, showing their fashion. But instead it's on the members of the audience and them watching, particularly the one woman in the center. And so I kept trying to convince myself that she was the subject within the shot, but I never got, I could never get both feet in on this. I really feel like the focus should be on the lead model who is walking with such a confident pose. All of the information on the left-hand side, I realize we have room for her to walk in visually, but it's a lot going on within this particular image, especially these people crammed into like a small space. So it does help to tell the story, but I would remove like a little bit more of that, maybe come just to the left-hand side of the brown vase, just to kind of clean up the image a little bit more. If you hold up your hand and just kind of get rid of the wood over there, you can kind of better see what I'm talking about. But really it's the focus on not where I want it to be that pushes me away from this image.
Okay, Fashion Show scored 20.
Next image is Flamenco on State Street, critique by Ellen.
I think this is a great image. I particularly like the guy with the trumpet over there, which you actually can't see because of our little faces. But I like that maybe didn't need as much stuff as there is over on the left, but I don't know how you get rid of that because you've got to, you can't really cut any more of her foot or hand off. So I don't know unless you were gonna change it into a square or image or something. I don't know. But I think it's a very interesting. You got a lot of liveliness on it, and I like where the trumpet player is.
Flamenco on State Street scored 20.
I don't like my stuff.
Flower Gals, critique by Ralph Cleven.
Okay, so this woman in the middle is just perfect. The way she's looking at you, the photographer, and smiling, I think works really well. Unfortunately, the woman on the right in the background she isn't smiling. She doesn't look all that happy about what's going on here. So it distracts from the story you're trying to tell with the picture. So in this case, one of the things to remember is that can you shift, you take this picture and then she's willing to sit there because you bought some flowers from her, obviously. Well, not obviously, but if you didn't, that's a great way to get people to smile. You come around to the right and you sort of eliminate that woman on the right and you use the flowers in the foreground and get the smiling woman. So again, you want to get past the snapshot thing, and if sometimes when you show her the picture or something, she really understands what you're trying to capture.
Flower Gals scored 20.
Friends in Isolation, critique by Say.
I just love dogs. I mean, take a look at this dog. Even though we can't see the expression on his or her face, we can tell that this dog just wants to make the owner happy. And this dog is like, this is excellent, right? This is great. This is why we're here, which is why you'd want to take a photograph like this. You have great focus where it needs to be. Having a little on-camera flash to kind of fill in the details on the runner and the dog would be nice in this particular case, but not super necessary. You still, if you shot it in RAW, you might be able to pull some of that information back, and that way we the viewers would be able to engage a little bit more with this activity that's going on. The light on the waves, they're coming in, it's beautiful. I like I was just noticing where the focus was on the wave in the foreground. The light on the waves is beautiful. And I think that you're feeling that edge of the frame was a good choice because it complements the seaweed on the right-hand side. So those two work off of each other so that we really have a very narrow path for these two to go down the beach and in life together.
I'm just going to chirp in because I love this shot.
Friends in Isolation scored 24.
Indigo Girl, critique by Ellen.
Well, you certainly, whoever took this, certainly engaged with his subject. I mean, she is really having a good time. I don't know if he told her some joke or what, but whatever. And I think it's a very charming picture. The setup is good because you see the path going down, but she's to the left of it. So it's kind of, you get the feeling of, you know, being out in the country somewhere. And she just thinks he or she is just the berries. I think it gives it's a nice environmental portrait. I mean, you see her environment. It's obviously where she lives. And I like it. I think it's well positioned. I think he didn't need to show the entire girl. They cutting it off where the purse ended was a good choice.
All right, Indigo Girl scored 21.
Not sure how to pronounce this. Kayan or Kayan Woman, critique by Ralph.
Yeah, it's a fascinating culture. The lack of eye contact, I think, doesn't help the picture. Your lighting is great. Your exposure, the focus looks really good. I like the shallow depth of field that throws that, what could have been a very busy background, out of focus. So all the technical elements, the lighting and everything is working really well. Now you just have to engage with the model. Be a little, well, no, it looks fine. I think the composition works well where you, if you cropped it, where you cropped it works fine. So it's just that engagement with the model. And then she probably gets a lot of pictures taken of her. So something special has to happen here.
All right, Kayan Woman scored 20.
Loyal Supporter, critique by Say.
So for such a simple image, I really do see a lot of clues here that tell me who this gentleman is, starting with the tattoo that's on his shoulder. That's, you know, definitely life affirming for him. And then I read the young and then maybe 8 or something like that. So I'm trying to, you know, gather like a little bit of who this guy is, but you always go to the eyes, which are, you know, obviously windows to the soul. And you can see that he is sharing a bit of himself with the camera. So whatever you've done, you've made it so that he allows you in. So that's excellent. And a lot of photographers can't make that happen. Again, being at the eye level works out really well. The lighting, having the light behind him and then having even light on his face works, yet you still have that catch light in his eyes. So it looks like you have flash on camera that's kind of just helping pop a little bit of light into the scene, which is a good choice. And if I didn't say so, the shallow depth of field is excellent in the shot also.
Loyal Supporter scored 21.
Morning Serenade, critique by Ellen.
I think this is was a good idea, but there are too many problems. First problem to me is I would cut up from the bottom. I would take out a lot of that. There's a bad shadow that's running right across the guitar player, more or less. And I would come in, I would crop up from the bottom so that the guitar player is a little bit bigger and has more importance. You don't need the street down there, I don't think. You don't need as much of the, you could keep the arch and still get rid of some of the bottom part. I would just cut up a long way up to the bottom. And can't do much, I don't think, about that shadow, but it is distracting for sure. But it's a good idea, and it's tempting when you see an arch and then you see some guy sitting there with a guitar. I mean, it's pretty hard to pass that up.
Morning Serenade scored 18.
Nicole, critiqued by Ralph.
Okay, so she's an amazing dancer. She puts her body into this beautiful position, and I'm assuming this was on a stage possibly, and the stage lighting was going on, which professional lighters are sometimes doing that, so that certainly didn't hurt. The fact that she's wearing dark clothes on a dark background, so the only light areas are face, hands, and feet, that's on purpose, I'm sure, by her. So again, it's kind of like back to the flower. The whole thing is absolutely gorgeous, and you did an excellent job of timing the photograph to catch all of this beauty. So you did a great job.
All right, Nicole scored 24.
Peace, critiqued by Say.
Again, we have a lovely portrait here with a gentleman who seems to be very comfortable in front of the camera. When I was looking at this, I kept looking at his face because I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I really feel like some of the texture has been removed from his face. His face feels a little bit too smooth to me, especially where his cheeks are by his nose, and so that for me tends to be a little bit distracting. I checked, his area where his beard is, and there's a little bit more texture there. Possibly that's just how his face is, I'm not sure, but I really feel like it kind of got smoothed out, and because of that, the hand of the photographer is a little bit heavy in that particular case. Again, the shallow depth of field photograph is a good choice. The diffuse lighting is also a good choice, and I'm not sure what the thing is that he's holding into his hand, but if I did know, it would add to the story. So it's excellent that you have that in the shot itself. Also, one shoulder higher than the other so that his body starts to create a little S-curve works beautifully also.
Right, Peace scored 21.
Shadow, critiqued by Ellen.
This is a problem for me, this picture. To begin with, I just feel like the whole right, I'm horrible on right and left. The whole right part of this picture doesn't need to be there. In other words, if you're going to do it, just keep it with the shadow of the woman and the tree on the left-hand side. The stuff on the right is doing nothing for you. So either it would, obviously it would have to go from a horizontal to either a square or probably a vertical. But you need to get rid of the right-hand side. It's just, there's nothing there of any kind of interest, and it's just messing up the picture. Also, it does need to be squared off a little bit on the top. It's a little bit listing to the right, so that needs to be squared off. But definitely, you need to get rid of the whole right-hand side. Keep the keep the shadow of the photographer. I'm assuming it is, and that part, but get rid of the other stuff.
All right, shadow scored 18.
Skate dancer, critiqued by Ralph.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, his pose is good. I think it's cropped too tight, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm not sure why there's a square crop on it. I mean, you might be trying to eliminate things. I love the shadow down there. It's almost like there's the picture down there with those palm tree shadows and that skateboarder shadow. That's the picture down there. And then your post-production treatment of sort of desaturating the background and keeping the color on him, it's a good idea. It does help separate him and keep the scene from becoming too busy. And he is well lit, and your timing's good, focus is good. So, but again, you just gotta, I think you're just cropped a little too tight. You're very, very close to the tangents on the edges with the hand and the skateboard.
All right, skate dancer scored 21.
Skater's Point, critiqued by Say.
So with this one of the things that I would like to see happen in this image is you have this beautiful arch that's going at the top, but it's getting cropped off on the framing. And so I'd like to actually see the highlight of the edge of that. I think there's probably still a highlight that runs around there. I still see the highlight. It looks like it might have gotten cropped out if it's there in your shot. This contrast within this is a little bit on the flat side. You can get more out of this image just by adding a little bit more on the blacks and bringing your midtones up just a little bit. Watch your highlights though, because his white shoe can start really losing information quickly. So if you just go to the contrast slider, it's not going to pull it. I would recommend that you go to if you're in Photoshop, go to curves, and if you're in Lightroom, go to definitely go into the blacks and bring the blacks up, and then play with your midtones that way too. Him being in the center of the shot, again, you have that curve that goes around the top, so it frames him. You have the stairs that are coming down, but him being in the center kind of, especially with the arching at the top, it just kind of bullseye, and so my eye doesn't get to wander around the image as much as it could had he been a little bit more off center. But it's a good shot. You can just take it a little bit further in post-processing.
Skater's Point scored 20.
Solitude on Sunday, critiqued by Ellen.
I love this guy. He cracks me up. I think maybe I would crop it a little bit on the right-hand side, crop up from you don't need, I mean, you don't want to crop off his foot, I realize, but you don't need that much bench down at the bottom. And I would crop in a little bit. I don't think, so you get a little bit more of him, because really the stuff with the wagon wheel or whatever that is and the bench on the right-hand side doesn't have too much to do with the whole thing. I mean, it's the house and him. And so I would crop from a little bit off the bottom and then on the right-hand side and focus a little bit more on him and on the house. But I think he's great.
Solitude on Sunday scored 23.
The Fish Report, critiqued by Ralph.
Okay, so let's technically it's a little flat. So again, in black and white, contrast is the key. Now, I don't want to. If you look to the left, you can see what I'm talking about. It's almost like it's a little hazy over there. So you're gonna have to be careful. And I usually work in the curves to fix this, because you've already lost your blacks. There's no detail in the black, so you don't want to bring those up anymore. So anyway, this is a little bit of a tricky one to get that contrast built back up. I wish the two guys down on the lower left were actually looking at the guy with the pipe, because then you would have made a connection between all of those people, and it would be great if the guy with the fishing pole was looking at him too. So then you would have had a story here. So a lot of times it's just timing. You just wait for it. You know, you shoot this and you go, wow, I hope they look at that guy. And then they all do, and that's the shot you want to get. So it's an interesting perspective. You know, we can't really see their faces, which is why it's even more important that they actually point their heads and look at that guy with the pipe.
The fish report scored 20.
Tipsy, critiqued by Say.
So like the one that Ralph was talking about where you have stage lighting, I think it looks like you're on a stage here also with a glossy floor. And the lighting itself does help. You caught a point in time where she is just about to tip over, and so you're really working with the idea of decisive moment. Each of these characters is doing their job and being dramatic, and you're catching it and you're filling the frame beautifully. It's almost like you have musical notes where their heads are, so they are staggered at different heights, and it looks like your focus is pretty good. There might be a little bit of movement in there, but all in all, it's a good shot. I'm not a person that particularly cares for theater shots, so it's not my forte, but I'm sure it will make many people's hearts sing. Thanks.
Okay, Tipsy scored 21.
Wading in the Creek, critiqued by Ellen.
This, everything needed to be moved. Unfortunately, what you wanted was the kid out of the shadow somewhere where he could be seen, and he was the main subject. What hits you immediately, or at least it hits me immediately, are the out of focus leaves in the far left. That is not what you want your focus to be. And I think it could have been a cute shot if he'd gotten in the sun, the leaves had gotten out of there altogether. And I'm not sure if he has a fishing rod or if he doesn't, or I'm not. You can't tell because it's in the shadow. It just it's just in the wrong place lighting wise. That's the main thing. And this out of focus plant needs to be out of there in the worst way. So I think there's a lot that needed to be, there was a possibility, but it needed a lot of work and it needed a lot of juggling around.
Right, Wading in the Creek scored 17. And for the people category, we have 10 accepted images. First one is Birdman, Bob Wagoner. Colors of India, Bob Rottenberg. Friends in Isolation, Jeff Lipschitz. Indigo Girl, Lorraine Woodman. Loyal Supporter, Sue Dodds. Nicole, Stephen Sherrill. Peace, Bill Hayer. Skate Dancer, Ken Pfeiffer. Solitude on Sunday, Patty Gutschall. And Tipsy, George Willett. And I think that wraps up the show.
The
Thank you,
next,
judges.
we're not quite finished. The next thing, that
Oh.
we have a couple of unscored
Oh,
videos
okay.
to take a look
Sorry.
at. So they have been assigned, but here's the first one. This is called Carrizo Plain. these are limited to 1 minute each, and the first one was set, I'm sorry, I missed who that was. Is it Ralph that we asked you to do?
Yeah, I think it was me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know it wasn't running quite correctly there, but I did watch it in the scoring, and you know, it looked pretty smooth. A couple of things to remember about videos like this is that very last scene was looked like a still photograph, but it was cropped in, so your format changed, and you don't want your format to change typically, and especially since nothing else changed. So you want to maintain that same format, whether you have to crop in or just not use that picture. Also, another thing to keep in mind is fading in and fading out. It's easy to do in video, so you're just coming in from black rather than cutting in. Doesn't have to be a long fade in or fade out. And then sort of an important thing about motion stories is the establishing, medium, and close-up component of storytelling. And I know you mixed drone footage with some video footage, I believe, and then stills, and you did some nice pan and scans on the stills. But so keep in mind that that we need, everything seemed to be, not everything, but almost everything seemed to be from the same distance. And that's one of the difficulties with drone footage, is darn the super wide lenses. So sometimes you want to just, I mean, even just taking the drone and holding it and pushing it into some of those flowers can give you some motion. So try and mix up what we're seeing in the view. I like the 1 minute time frame. I think that's great for a little thing like this. I like the titling. I think the titling worked well. The only other suggestion I might have in a scene like this is to provide some scale, like maybe having the drone follow some people walking along a trail through the flowers. That would give us some scale for that. It's an incredible place, so that's just a suggestion.
I might also note that we're aware that the video presentation for the meeting is not good. So the videos are available on Flickr. You can see them at the quality that a little closer to the real quality. Thank you. Next one will be sea monkeys.
Snow monkeys.
Snow monkeys, sorry.
I was like, what?
What?
Yeah, yeah. Did I miss one?
All right. So it definitely, for those of you that have not seen this video in its regular flowing form, it's definitely worth stopping and checking out. And for whomever created the video, lucky you, man. You got to go and play with like snow monkeys and go film them. I think that's excellent. One of the things that I would like to recommend is that the going from one image to the next image was like a very quick snap. So I recommend working on playing with a fade a little bit more from image to image. It doesn't, as Ralph had said, it doesn't have to be dramatic or a long fade, but just a little bit more of a fade so that it transitions easier. Because once I'm starting to try and I'm getting used to what's going on in the scene, then all of a sudden it snaps into another image. When you were recording, it looks like some of those shots were pretty tight when you were photographing them. So we get a lot of camera movement while the monkeys are moving around. And I can tell you that you would make my husband nauseous just by some of the camera movement that's going on. So if you have the ability and the skills to actually zoom into your capture a little bit more so you can smooth out the a little bit of the jerkiness when filming, that would help out the video quite a bit. And then I know you closed with the one monkey that was with the eyes closed. Well, his eyes were like halfway closed. I don't think that was your best shot, and so I'd recommend that you figure out a different ending. Like a portfolio with movies, people are going to remember the very first images the most, and then they're going to remember the last images the most. So do what you can to make those your strongest images, so that's what people leave with. This is true when you eat. You remember your appetizers and you remember your dessert better than you remember your main course many times. So we can use that as a tool when we're creating projects.
All right. Well, everybody, I want to say thank you for bearing with us as we're learning to make sense of how to do this virtually, and a particular thank you to all three of our judges and Club Judge Ellen, who learned Zoom and was actually the first one to get the scores in and everything. It's a great learning experience. I welcome any kind of communication from anyone, judges or members, that have suggestions about what we might do to continue to make this relevant and effective for us. So all that said,
Many thanks to you, Bill, by the way. He got me onto Zoom. He got me set up. I run my own meetings, and I really appreciated the help. Great.
okay, I need somebody to take over then.
Not me.
All right. Once again, thank you all, and I'm gonna end the meeting, and we don't have any virtual meeting on next Tuesday, and we'll see where we are with program night when that comes.